Hi there, Colin Hall, BizPlans UK. Now, the last week I've been suffering from a really nasty bug. Don't know whether it's COVID or just your usual man flu. I'm just starting to recover now, so I thought it's time to put some more videos in the can. And this time, now that some of the gnashing of teeth and hysteria has died down a little bit, I thought it worth taking a look at the results of the US election, particularly how it will affect UK small businesses. There is a lot to talk about with regard to Trump. Some of it is, frankly, hysteria. Some of it is a little bit more nuanced and analytical and logical. You can guarantee that half of what you see and read in the media, particularly mainstream media, is frankly rubbish. And you also have to bear in mind that in politics, particularly US politics, and particularly with a politician like Trump, who is a populist, half of what he says isn't true. Either because, frankly, he's lying, or he's saying what he needs to do to get elected, or it's just not physically possible, in which case you can ignore it. And a lot of the hysteria derives from either the twisting of the narrative by some of the mainstream media, or simply because people are taking too much of what he says at his word, and without actually thinking about whether or not what he wants to do or says he's going to do is actually likely or possible. So, now the hysteria's died down, let's take a more measured look at what it means for the UK. And I'm going to concentrate on four things: foreign policy, trade policy, energy, and the environment. Now, as ever in politics, those are interlinked, but I'm going to focus today on foreign policy, as otherwise the video will be far too long, and I'll do the rest in future videos. So, foreign policy. Going into the election, he was complaining that the US is spending far too much money supporting Ukraine, that he could end the war in 24 hours, and that he does not want the US involved in any more overseas adventures. There is indeed a long streak in America for isolationism. Some would argue that's why they relate to the late's not fair, why they joined later the two world wars. And there is some truth to that, but in this case it's more to do with finances and spending money that he doesn't think the US can afford. Now, in reality, of the $130 billion the US has provided to Ukraine, over half of that has been in munitions, and the vast majority of that is munitions that the US actually had in storage and were eventually going to be destroyed as obsolete anyway. So in some respects, shipping it to Ukraine was cheaper than destroying it. So Ukraine did the US a favour in that regard. Put that aside, the big fear was that Trump would remove support for Ukraine, and they are the biggest donor and supplier of arms to Ukraine, and that Europe would be unable or unwilling to match the deficit, and as a result, Putin would win, he'd roll over Ukraine, and then be on the doorstep of NATO countries like Poland and so on, and then we'd be facing the real prospect of World War III, or that the European countries would feel forced to fill the gap, and the resulting cost of that would do harm to economies, and that certainly in the UK we'd have to increase defence spending considerably, and that money would be taken from other sources, and then taxes go up to pay for it, which of course will have a big negative impact on UK businesses. The evidence so far suggests that those fears are overblown. Trump has nominated two hawks into positions as the Secretary of State, which is their foreign minister, and the National Intelligence Agency. At least that doesn't indicate that he wants to walk away from the world, rather that he intends to use American muscle where he needs to, particularly in places like China, which he sees as an existential threat to the US. And his conversations initially with Zelensky in Ukraine suggest that Ukraine are at least satisfied for now that they're not in any immediate threat, and the recent opening up by Biden of the use of US missiles on Russian territory would seem to suggest that Ukraine is trying to establish itself in a better negotiating position, so when Trump does come in, then whatever peace is negotiated will be better for Ukraine. Now, the danger is, of course, that Trump follows through on some of his more isolationist rhetoric from the election campaign and does walk away, and then that would cause us problems in the UK. As I said, more money spent on defence to fill the gap, or Ukraine falls, and then we still have to spend more on defence because then we're more worried about resurgent Russia. At the moment, I don't think that's likely. But if it does, then you need to batten down the hatches, because there will be more costs and more taxes to pay for it. Wider afield, the threat from China is, although overblown, still real. And you're going to see a lot more rhetoric and action regarding China, though most of that will play out in things like trade policy rather than anything else. So any fears that people have that Trump's going to walk away from the world, I think are overblown. But I do think he's not going to start a bunch of wars, which is a good thing. And for now, I don't think we have too much to worry on foreign policy. So that's it for today, and I'll speak to you soon.